Would you like to be more emotionally strong? The answer isn't in avoiding pain or hiding under a blanket every time life hits you. No, my friend. True strength is in how you get up after you fall, and how you face adversity without letting it break you. You won't learn all of this overnight, but with practice and some discipline, you could become a machine of resilience. Ancient philosophers already knew this. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. So if you ever feel trapped in your emotions, it's time to change your mindset and start cultivating habits that will strengthen you from within. Ready to discover the 11 habits that will make you unstoppable? Then don't miss the last one, because it will leave you speechless. But before we begin, listen to this story that will help you better understand the wisdom contained in this material. Once upon a time, there was a young man named Peter who lived in a bustling city full of lights, noise, and opportunities. Peter was known for his enthusiasm and energy, but one day, life gave him a test he never imagined. He suddenly lost his job, and with it, the financial security he valued so much. The situation seemed insurmountable. The bills kept coming, his savings began to run out, and his nights were filled with insomnia and worry. Peter felt like he was trapped in an emotional storm with no clear path to get out. One day, while walking in a park in search of clarity, he met an old man sitting on a bench feeding pigeons. The old man smiled and said, "You seem to be carrying a heavy burden. Young man, may I give you a piece of advice?" Without knowing why, Peter decided to trust him and told him about his situation. After listening carefully, the old man said, "Emotional strength is not something we are born with, but something we build. The key is in small habits. If you want to get out of this storm, start with these 3 things. Find a reason to be grateful. Every day, face your negative thoughts as if they were intruders, and take care of yourself as you would someone you love." At first, Peter had his doubts. How could something so simple help him face such a big problem? But he had nothing to lose, so he decided to try. Every night before going to bed, Peter wrote down 3 things he was grateful for. Even on the hardest days, it was as simple as the smell of coffee in the morning or a stranger's smile on the street. This habit began to change his perspective. Life, although complicated, still had valuable moments. Then, every time a negative thought assailed him, he challenged it. "Is this absolutely true?" he would ask himself. By questioning his fears, he began to realize that many of them were exaggerations or lies that his mind was telling him. Finally, he started to take care of himself. He went for walks, listened to music that made him happy, and even allowed himself to cry when he needed to, without judging himself. Over time, Peter not only found a new job, but also discovered something much more valuable, an emotional resilience that allowed him to face challenges with courage. When someone asked him how he had overcome that dark stage, he would smile and reply, "Life will always have storms, but if you cultivate habits that strengthen you, you can find calm even in the midst of chaos." The moral of this story is that emotional strength is not about not feeling pain, but about learning to manage it with simple but powerful habits. Anyone can build a lasting refuge capable of withstanding any storm. Before we begin with the first lesson, if you find these videos useful, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay informed about the latest updates. Let's get started. 1. The power of resilience. Have you ever fallen and, instead of getting up, decided to stay on the ground for a little while longer? Of course, we've all done it. It's comfortable, You won't lie. And besides, everyone understands you. But have you ever wondered why it's so hard for us to get up? Why, instead of bouncing higher after each blow, do we prefer to stay and watch life from the ground? Resilience isn't just a pretty term you hear at motivational conferences. It's much more than that. To be resilient means to be able to face adversity without it destroying you. It's the ability not only to fall, but also to get up with more strength. And unlike what many people think, it's not about being invulnerable. It's about being flexible, about knowing how to adapt. It's easy to say, be resilient from the couch with a coffee in hand and nothing to lose. But when life really hits you in the face, that's when you realize that resilience isn't something you cultivate in a single day. What happens when things don't go as you expected? You might get angry, and this is natural, you're not a robot. But the problem arises when we get stuck in that emotion, as if it were our final home. Imagine you're a basketball. If you let yourself fall and don't bounce, what happens? You stay there, squashed, unable to move. Now if you are flexible enough, the fall doesn't destroy you. Instead of staying on the ground, you get momentum and jump higher. And that is the essence of resilience. The bounce isn't automatic. It requires strength. But above all, it requires a change in mindset. First, don't fool yourself. There is no such thing as instant resilience or a magic formula. But there is something you can do every day to train it. Change your focus. Life isn't a straight path. If you insist on walking on a flat path, you'll never discover the strength of your own jumps. Think of adversities as opportunities for growth. Even if it's a painful reminder that the path isn't always easy, a wise philosophy can be a good ally in this process. Wise thinkers taught that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it. Instead of complaining about what has fallen on you, change your perspective. What can I learn from this? When you find something positive in the challenge, you're already halfway to resilience. Another technique is self-affirmation. Repeating to yourself that you are capable of overcoming difficulties may sound cliché, but there is something powerful in the words you choose to talk to yourself. It's as if you were telling your mind, okay, this hurts, but I'm going to get up and keep going. And over time, those small daily actions begin to shape your emotional strength. And of course, surrounding yourself with people who support you is also fundamental. Resilience is not just a personal skill, but a social practice. Sometimes we need a good push to get off the ground, and others are the ones who can give us that boost. So the next time you fall, don't just sit there feeling sorry for yourself. Remember that the real challenge is to get up, and not just once, but as many times as necessary. Every blow can be a lesson, and every lesson an opportunity to bounce higher. As a wise person said, the pain is temporary, but the lesson is eternal. 2. Master your mind. Has it ever happened to you that when you face something important, a voice in your head starts telling you that you're not good enough? That annoying little voice, like a frustrated DJ, repeating what you can't do, what you're not capable of achieving? If you've ever felt that your mind is working against you, welcome to the club. We've all been there. And if you think you're the only one who faces their inner critic, I have news for you. We all have one. The good news is that with practice and some discipline, you can learn to silence that voice and take control of your thoughts. How? Well, keep reading. The inner critic is not a friendly voice. It's not that wise intuition that guides you, but rather an obstacle in your path. Sometimes it seems like a worried friend who warns you about dangers, but it's nothing more than a reminder of your fears and insecurities. This inner critic has an ability to sow doubt when you need it most, feeding on your past mistakes and comparisons with others. Now, not all is lost. A wise philosophy teaches us something valuable in this regard. The only thing you can really control is your mind. Your thoughts don't have to rule you. Instead, you can decide what you allow them to do. Wise thinkers talked about building inner strength and how to focus on what is within our control, leaving what is not to the side. So if the voice that tells you you won't make it is tormenting you, remember that you decide whether to listen to it or not. The first thing you should do is recognize that voice when it appears. Many times we try to ignore it or fight against it, but the first step is to understand when it shows up. Generally, this voice makes itself heard when you face new challenges or when you make a mistake. If you're able to identify it, you can start to question it and not let yourself be carried away by what it says. The next key is to change your perspective. Imagine you have a date with a friend and a critic arrives who always tells you what you can't do. Would you listen to him or ignore him? Well, the mind works the same way. If you start to see yourself as an ally and stop being your own worst enemy, your focus will change. If the critic tells you you can't do it, respond calmly. When did I decide that I couldn't? Another effective strategy is to face fears with action. Wise people recommended anticipating the worst to be prepared. Instead of letting fears dominate your thoughts, face those fears actively. If the inner voice tells you that something is too difficult, ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen if I try? And finally, there is something you cannot stop doing. Repeat it over and over again. This simple but effective trick will help you strengthen your mind. If you constantly repeat that you are in control, that your thoughts don't dominate you, and that what the inner critic says is not the absolute truth, little by little you'll start to believe it. Like a mental coach, every time you silence the critic, you strengthen your emotional resilience. The path to emotional strength will not be easy or fast, but what wise people taught us is that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it. So the next time that negative voice starts swirling in your head, respond to it with action, question its authority, and remember that you are the one who decides what thoughts should guide you. As a wise person said, silencing the inner critic is not an act of weakness, but a display of control and courage in the face of what really matters. 3. The strength of gratitude. Did you know there's a powerful, free, and always within reach tool that could change the way you face life's ups and downs? No, I'm not talking about a Marvel superpower or some secret self-help course that promises miraculous results. I'm talking about gratitude. Yes, that same word that sometimes sounds so simple, but has the potential to transform any dark moment into an opportunity to grow. Now I know what you're thinking. Gratitude? Seriously? How can I be grateful for something bad that happened to me? Well, that's where the magic comes in. Wise people of antiquity who took life a little more seriously than us already knew this. For them, everything that happens to us is an opportunity to learn, even pain. And gratitude is the key to unlocking that lesson. It's not about seeing everything through rose-colored glasses, but about changing your focus and using difficulties as a springboard to become more emotionally strong. Imagine that life is like a river. Sometimes the water is calm, flowing smoothly, but other times the river overflows and drags everything in its path. Those moments of chaos, pain, and frustration are inevitable. And instead of resisting as if we could stop the flow of the water, why not learn to swim in it? This is where gratitude comes in. Instead of focusing on what has been taken from you or what you don't have, focus on what you do have. Gratitude does not mean ignoring suffering, but recognizing that even in difficulties, there is something that strengthens you. It could be a lesson learned, an opportunity to step out of your comfort zone, or even the simple satisfaction that despite everything, you are still standing. Have you ever noticed how the most resilient people are the ones who are grateful for what they have, even if their life is not perfect? It's not a coincidence. It's a habit that is cultivated. And of course, it's not about being an emotional robot who hides pain with a fake smile. But with practice, it is possible to transform that pain into fuel that propels you forward. Because every time you choose to be grateful for what you have, however small it may be, you are building an emotional fortress that does not depend on external circumstances. So how do we cultivate this habit of gratitude? The key is in daily practice. Don't wait for life to give you a perfect moment to give thanks. Do it even on gray days. It can be as simple as being grateful for a hot coffee in the morning, or for the fact that your body is still functioning after a bad day. The important thing is to start training your mind to see the positive, even when everything seems to be going wrong. Remember that emotional strength is not about being invulnerable to life's blows, but about learning to get up every time you fall. And gratitude is that secret tool that helps you do it. Wise people would have loved to know that something so simple could be the key to living with more inner peace and strength. So the next time the river of life overflows, don't resist it. Learn to swim with gratitude and watch how your pain becomes the foundation of your strength. As a wise person said, pain is not the end, but the beginning of your growth. It is only a matter of how you face it. 4. Breathe deeply. Have you ever noticed that when everything seems to go wrong, the only thing you can truly control is your breathing? Yes, that automatic and often underestimated act that we take for granted. But did you know that breathing, well, can be a lifesaver when emotions overwhelm you like a tropical storm? It's surprisingly more effective than you imagine, and best of all, it's at the tip of your nose. Literally. Stress, anxiety, and frustration are like a series of waves that hit you over and over again. Maybe you've found yourself trapped in one of these emotional storms, right? And in that moment, all you do is follow the current, drowning in thoughts and emotions that seem to have no end. But here's the key. If you learn to breathe correctly, you can change the course of that storm, as if you could control the wind. Wise thinkers knew that our emotions don't have to govern us. If you manage to stay calm even in the midst of chaos, you will be stronger. Breathe deeply, pay attention, and start managing your emotions. Not the other way around. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about a magical breath that makes your problems disappear in the blink of an eye. That would be great, wouldn't it? But what I want to tell you is that there's a simple, inexpensive, and above all, effective technique. Deep breathing. The trick is to do it consciously. Think of it as if you were a car getting an oil change. It's something that, while it seems simple, gives your body the fuel to function efficiently. By breathing deeply, you are giving your body the signal that it can relax, that it doesn't need to be in survival mode all the time. When you feel trapped by anxiety or any other intense emotion, take a pause. Instead of continuing to accumulate thoughts and feelings that only drag you down, try the following. Inhale slowly and deeply through your nose, filling your abdomen, not just your chest, and exhale calmly through your mouth. Do this several times. At first, it may not seem to be working, but with practice, you'll see that your thoughts clear up and your body begins to release tension. The curious thing about this practice is that it's like having a reset button for your mind. When you feel lost or out of control, you just have to breathe deeply and focus on the present moment. Each breath is an opportunity to reconnect, to regain your balance. And the most impressive thing is that you don't need any special equipment or superhero skills, just your body and your ability to pay attention. Of course, no one is going to tell you that this will solve all your problems or make you emotionally invincible. Overnight, nothing is that easy. But if you practice breathing correctly and make it a daily habit, you'll start to notice that you face challenges with more serenity. It's like training a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. A wise philosophy which advocates for calm in the face of adversity also has a lot to say about this. Wise thinkers teach us that although we can't always control what happens to us, we can control how we respond to it. In short, deep breathing is not just a technique for moments of crisis, but a tool that, if you incorporate it into your daily life, can help you stay emotionally strong. Facing internal storms won't always be easy, but like a wise person, you can learn to navigate through them with calm and determination. Breathe deeply and let the magic of calm allow you to be the master of your emotions. As a wise person said, inner peace is not found in controlling what happens outside, but in how you respond to it. 5. Learn to say now. I've all been there. You feel trapped between the desire to please everyone and the need to protect your well-being. How many commitments have you gotten into just because you didn't know how to say no? How many times have you accepted something knowing deep down that you had neither the desire nor the energy to do it, but you did it so you wouldn't look bad? It's a vicious cycle that leaves us empty, exhausted, and worst of all, guilty. And that's where the art of saying no comes in. It's not just a matter of setting limits. It's a technique for maintaining your mental and emotional peace without feeling like you're selfish. Imagine you are a glass of water. Every day, people, responsibilities, and expectations fill that glass a little more, a little more. A point is reached where the water begins to overflow, and then you feel tired, irritable, and without strength for yourself. But what would happen if you gave yourself permission to put a plug in your glass? Saying no is that plug that prevents your energy from spilling out of control. A wise philosophy teaches us that we should focus on what is within our control and what is outside of it. Simply put, we shouldn't worry. So by saying no, you are prioritizing what really matters, your well-being. Why is it so hard for us to say no? Guilt, that old friend, always appears when we try to set limits. They tell us that we should always be kind, always available, always generous, but at what cost? At the cost of our emotional health. If every time you say yes to others you are saying no to yourself, then you are deceiving yourself. The fear of looking bad, of being rejected, of feeling that we are not living up to others' expectations, paralyzes us. But here's the great revelation. It's not your responsibility to save everyone, or to be the superhero in other people's situations. To start setting limits and saying no without guilt, you first have to recognize your own limits. Self-awareness is the first step. If you don't know how far you can go, how will you know when to stop? Take a moment to think about what really matters to you and what you need, what drains you and what recharges you. From there, decide if what you are asked to do is in line with your values and priorities. When you are aware of what matters to you, it becomes much easier to identify when to say no without feeling bad about it. Another essential tool is assertiveness. Saying no doesn't have to be a war. It is not necessary to be blunt or rude. Just be clear and direct. You can say, "No, I can't do that right now," or "I'd rather not commit to that." Sometimes it's enough to just be honest and not give long explanations. If you start practicing assertiveness, you'll realize that you don't really have to defend your own limits. You just have to be firm and respectful. This small change in the way you communicate will make your life much lighter. Then there's the fear of rejection. Here's the key. If someone feels bad because of your no, that's their problem, not yours. People have their own expectations, but you're not here to meet them all. Let others also learn to respect your limits. If you worry about what they might think, remember that the real challenge is to free yourself from the need to please others at all costs. And when you free yourself, you realize that it's much more gratifying to maintain your inner peace. Finally, remember that doing all this for yourself is the most important thing. If you do it thinking about your well-being and not about pleasing others, it will be much easier for you. It's not about being selfish, but about recognizing that if you don't protect yourself, you'll overflow and won't be able to offer the best of yourself. If you feel guilty for not doing something you didn't want to do, that guilt is nothing more than an emotion you can manage. Who will take care of you if you don't? This is the basic principle of self-compassion, taking care of yourself so you can take better care of others. Learning to say no is an act of self-love. It's not about rejecting others, but about setting a clear boundary that allows you to be emotionally strong. It's not selfishness, it's common sense. The art of saying no is actually the art of saying yes to what really matters: your peace, your time, and your well-being. As they say, setting boundaries is not an act of aggression toward others. It is an act of self-defense. 6. Accept what you can't change. Do you sometimes wonder why everything has to be so complicated? Why are we always fighting against what we cannot change when the most sensible thing would be to accept that some things are simply beyond our control? It may sound like a cheap trick, but accepting what you can't change is actually the key to freeing yourself from unnecessary emotional baggage. It's an exercise in emotional strength, yes, even if the idea of giving up doesn't sound like a winning strategy. Life is full of moments that seem to make us want to scream, tear our hair out, and rant against the universe. And you know what? That's okay for a little while. But clinging to those moments as if your happiness depended on correcting what's already irreparable turns you into an emotional prisoner. Think of it as a dog chasing its own tail. You get tired. You go around and around, but you get nowhere. That's where radical acceptance comes in. A concept that a wise philosophy has practiced for centuries, and that basically says, if you can't change it, stop wasting time fighting against it. Radical acceptance is not surrendering to life. Far from it. It is accepting that there are situations that are beyond your control. It's like a river. If you try to swim against the current, you will get exhausted and never move forward. Instead of fighting against that current, it's better to learn to flow with it. The result: less frustration, more peace of mind. Sometimes being emotionally strong doesn't mean resisting at all costs, but rather recognizing the limits of your control and taking a step back with serenity. I'm going to be honest with you. Accepting the unacceptable isn't easy. No one said it was a walk in the park. But a good first step is to start by making a list of what you can and cannot control. Yes, it sounds like a cheap coaching exercise, but the simple act of writing it down already gives you a sense of control. Gratitude also plays a crucial role in this process. It may sound repetitive, but concentrating on what you have, what you are, and what you have achieved helps you soften the frustration over what you cannot change. When you focus on the positive, everything looks a little clearer. And if you ever find yourself trapped in your emotions, remember that it's best to give them space without letting them control you. It's okay to feel angry or sad, but don't stay anchored in those feelings. Accept that internal storm, and when it passes, move on. Finally, remember that everything passes. Yes, everything passes. That crisis, that bad day, that problem that seems insurmountable, it all passes. Life has a way of turning, and even if you see everything as gray now, the sun will soon appear. Radical acceptance is ultimately an exercise in patience and a belief that what seems unsustainable today will be just a part of the past tomorrow. Life is a process of acceptance. Accepting what we cannot change is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. It is an act of emotional intelligence. If you stop fighting against the unchangeable, you can direct your energy to what does depend on you. Radical acceptance allows you to free yourself from invisible chains and offers you the freedom to be yourself in the midst of chaos. As a wise proverb says, freedom is not in changing everything, but in learning to live with what you cannot change. *7. The power of reflection. Have you ever stopped to think about how you face the situations that life throws at you? I'm not talking about those automatic responses you give when someone asks you for something or when pressure builds. I'm talking about that ability to pause, reflect, and ask yourself, is this really affecting me the way I think it is? If you've never done that, let me tell you that you're missing out on a powerful tool that not only makes you more emotionally strong, but also gives you control over your own life. Wise thinkers, those philosophers who seem to have it all figured out, talked a lot about the power of reflection. For them, self-evaluation was not just a good practice, but a necessity to live a life in peace and balance. They understood that our mind has the power to interpret everything, but also to distort it. So why not use that power intelligently? Reflection isn't easy at first. It feels like looking in a mirror and not seeing anything clearly. We face our own minds, which constantly bombard us with thoughts, emotions, and judgments, like a river that never stops flowing. But here's the trick. Instead of letting yourself be carried away by that torrent of thoughts, you can choose to be the observer. You can stop and ask yourself, is this problem really as big as I'm making it? This process of reflecting on our thoughts and reactions is not just a practice of self-knowledge, but also a way to strengthen our emotional resilience. When you take the time to evaluate your reactions, you can better understand why you respond in a certain way. That way, instead of being carried away by chaos, you are able to choose how to respond with calm and without losing control. First, don't fool yourself, it won't be an easy or instant task. But every great habit is formed little by little. It's not just about being alone, but about being aware of what's happening in your mind. If you don't give yourself space to think, your mind will fill with noise and you'll lose control. Reflection begins when you ask yourself difficult questions like, why am I so upset about this? Or, how can I handle this situation differently? Next time, these questions aren't meant to make you feel bad. They're meant to help you grow. They are the key to you understanding yourself and the situations you face better. It's not enough to do it just once. Reflection has to be constant. Reflect after key moments of the day, especially when something has affected you emotionally. If it helps, write down your thoughts. The key is to turn reflection into a habit, something you do not just when you remember, but as part of your daily routine. Listening to your inner self is perhaps the simplest, but also the most ignored piece of advice. That inner voice that speaks to you isn't there to bother you. It's there to guide you. Listen to it and learn to trust it, because it will help you make wiser and calmer decisions. Self-evaluation doesn't make you a perfect person. Nobody is, but it gives you something much more valuable: the ability to understand yourself and, therefore, to have control over how you face life. The next time you face a challenging situation, don't react automatically. Take a moment to reflect and to see the situation from another perspective. Don't let fear or anxiety catch you by surprise. Learn to be emotionally strong, as wise people did, through constant reflection. Reflection is a habit that transforms you, not only in the moment you practice it, but in every challenge you face. No matter how difficult a situation is, self-evaluation gives you the ability to see it from a new perspective, to recognize your emotions, and to act with clarity. It's not magic. It's just mental and emotional strength built with small daily steps. So why not start today? After all, if you don't invest in yourself, who will? As a wise person said, constant reflection is the first step to taking the reins of your life, because only when you understand your thoughts can you choose how to act. 8. Connect your mind with your body. Have you ever felt that the world is hitting you from all sides, but you still manage to stay on your feet? Maybe it's not magic or luck, but something much simpler. Your body and mind are working together like a well-oiled team. If you don't believe it, it's time for you to put the old wise formula into practice. Strong body, strong mind. At first, it seems like an empty phrase, something your physical education teacher would say to get you moving. But the truth is that the connection between the body and the mind is real. And it's not just about being in shape to look good. It's much more than that. The truth is that when your body feels strong, your mind also gets stronger. It's like when you build a solid house. If the foundations are firm, everything you build on top will be more stable. Imagine you're going through a bad time, one of those that makes you think you're never going to get out of the hole. You feel like everything is out of control, and you really don't know where to start. Now, the answer isn't to spend hours feeling sorry for yourself or seeking comfort in negative thoughts, even though your mind pushes you to do just that. Did you know that one of the best ways to break that cycle is to move your body? When you exercise, you not only improve your physical condition, but also train your mind for adversity. Why? Because exercise has a direct impact on your brain. When we do physical activity, we release endorphins, those magical little molecules that make us feel good. But what we don't always see is that exercise also reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. In a way, the sweat you leave at the gym or on the running track translates into less stress. It's as if each repetition of a push-up were a way of clearing the mind of worries, leaving space for clarity. Now, this doesn't mean you should leave everything else aside. It's not about using exercise as an excuse to avoid facing problems, but you can see it as a tool, a way to put your mind in order. And of course, exercise also has its philosophical side, something that ancient wise people understood very well. For them, control over the body was an essential step toward control over the mind. Caring for the body is not just an aesthetic issue, but an issue of discipline, strength, and resilience. If you really want to strengthen your mind, you cannot ignore the power of exercise. It's not about running marathons or lifting 200-pound weights. Just make it part of your life. Start with small victories, a daily walk, a short yoga session, or even a few minutes of stretching in the morning. The important thing is to make exercise a constant habit, something your body and mind expect as part of the day. Remember that at the end of the day, the mind and body are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one strong without the other. So the next time you feel like everything is falling apart, don't seek comfort in excuses. Get up, move your body, and you'll notice how your mind begins to calm down, to focus, to get stronger. Burn this into your mind, my friend. The body is the first to react to chaos. The mind follows the same direction. But when the body becomes strong, the mind aligns. 9. The science of happiness. Have you ever wondered why sometimes you wake up as if you were destined to be the protagonist of a horror movie, while other times you get up with a smile, as if life were a field of daisies? Well, the answer is in habits. No, I'm not talking about that habit of drinking coffee at 7 a.m. or checking social media before bed. I'm talking about emotional habits, those small rituals that, if you cultivate them with the same dedication you water your plants, can completely change your day and, of course, your life. A wise philosophy, one that seems more complicated than a 1,000-piece puzzle, has something to say about this. Wise people believe that we cannot control what happens around us, but we can control how we react to it. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You can't prevent traffic from making you late, but you can prevent it from making you lose your cool, and with it, your good mood. To be emotionally strong, you don't need to be a superhero or have a magic wand. All you need is a little self-awareness and some habits. First, start with recognition. Acknowledging your emotions is the first step to managing them. Don't act brave by saying, "It's nothing," when you know you actually feel a knot in your stomach. Stop and observe. If you can't change what you feel, you can change how you decide to respond. A wise person in that situation would tell you, it's not what happens to you but how you interpret it. The next habit is gratitude. It's almost like putting a pink filter on everything around you. Every day, try to find something to be grateful for. It can be as simple as the sun coming out and giving you a little warmth, or having a cup of coffee in your hands. You don't have to write a gratitude journal or do hour-long meditations, but you should make the effort to value the small things. If gratitude were a muscle, the happiest people would be those who exercise it every day. Another trick is to change your focus. Don't waste mental energy on what you can't control. Sound familiar? Of course, we've all been there, obsessed with the details of a situation we can't change. But if you take a few seconds to breathe and think, okay, I can't control this, but I can control what I'm going to do next, you'll be taking control of your emotions. Wise people would call it acceptance. Or as one of them would say, accepting what you cannot change sets you free. And don't forget the importance of self-care. Taking care of yourself emotionally is like keeping your car in good condition. If you take care of it, it will take you far. A little exercise, eating well, getting enough sleep, and surrounding yourself with people who uplift you are key ingredients. Imagine your mind as a garden. If you let weeds, negative thoughts, Toxic people grow without control. The garden will never flourish. But if you take care of it and cultivate it, it will be a place full of flowers, peace, and tranquility. Don't expect miracles or radical changes overnight. Happiness is not something that magically appears like in TV commercials. It's a process. But if you cultivate these habits day after day, starting with the simplest things, you'll see how your emotional life becomes stronger, more balanced, and much more positive. Remember, you don't have to be a philosopher to apply this wisdom. You just need a little discipline, a touch of gratitude, and the courage to recognize what you feel to transform it. Listen very carefully to what I'm going to tell you. My friend, true emotional strength is not about avoiding the storms, but about learning to dance in the rain. Asterisk 10. The magic of forgiveness. Have you ever been trapped in the past, dwelling on something that hurt you to the point of not being able to look ahead? Don't worry, you're not the only one. Forgiveness, that beautiful and noble concept that many see as an act of kindness toward others, is actually a gift you give to yourself. Of course, it's easy to say, forgive and you will be free. But how can you really forgive just like that? A wise and practical ancient philosophy reminds us that the control of our emotions is in our hands. They spoke of being strong, of resisting adversity. But the truth is that to be truly emotionally strong, we need to learn to let go. And forgiveness, although it sometimes sounds like a miraculous recipe, is one of the most powerful ways to let go of what weighs us down. The first and most complicated step is to recognize that the pain is not going to go away on its own over time. No, it's not like a scratch on your knee that heals with a little rest. Emotional pain has a bad habit of staying and opening wounds that seem to never close. It's like when you forget the bread in the oven. You leave it in too long and, well, you know what happens next. But even though the pain is real, holding on to it will not heal it. What if I told you that by holding on to that grudge, all you are doing is keeping the wound open? Forgiveness is not for the other person, it is for you. It's like cleaning the window of your mind. When you forgive, you stop being a prisoner of what happened. And in the process, you get rid of an unnecessary burden. This act does not mean that you approve of what happened or that it erases the harm, but that you decide not to carry that heavy backpack any longer. The answer is not as complicated as it might seem. Forgiveness is not something that happens overnight, but it is a habit you can start to cultivate. To begin with, it's important to pause and reflect on what is really affecting you. It's not about stopping yourself from feeling, but about recognizing that those feelings are just that, feelings. Accepting them without judgment is the first step toward liberation. Next, try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. It's not about justifying the unjustifiable, but understanding that we all make mistakes can be a starting point. Wise people, in their wisdom, teach us not to take things personally. When someone hurts you, they often don't do it because they want to destroy you, but because they are simply dealing with their own demons. By seeing life in this way, you realize that forgiveness is more an act of understanding than of absolution. Finally, forgiveness requires a small gesture of courage. It's not about forgetting everything, but about freeing your heart. It's like letting go of a rope that's burning you just because you're afraid of falling. Let go. If you don't, you will be left hanging forever, not moving forward, not growing. And growing is what really matters. Forgiving is not an act of weakness. It's an act of strength. By freeing your heart, you open up space for bigger things like inner peace and genuine happiness. Remember, forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it does change your future. So the next time a grudge traps you, make an effort to let go, not for the other person, but for yourself. As a wise person said, freedom begins when you decide to stop carrying what weighs you down. 11. Live in the present. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you've been caught in the cycle of anxiety? Probably more times than you'd like to admit. I'll ask you a question. How many moments of your life are you really living, instead of being trapped in what was or what could be? Yes, the past and the future, those two great thieves of peace. Wise people, with their straightforward philosophy, teach us that the only moment we truly have is the present. Do you dare to listen? Anxiety becomes a monster that appears when we least expect it. It's there, lurking, reminding you of what you didn't do, what you didn't say, or what could happen in the future if everything falls apart. But you know what? If you look closely, that monster doesn't really exist. It's just a shadow we create by looking back or by anticipating the future. It's as if you were trying to walk while constantly looking back. What happens? We trip, we fall, and most importantly, we never move forward. Now, if we put ourselves in the shoes of a wise person, the key is to learn to be here and now. Yes, live the present. How? The answer lies in some simple habits that will allow you to strengthen your mind and therefore your emotions. Here are some ideas. The first practice is the most basic and probably the most ignored: stopping to breathe. Yes, it sounds simple, but believe me, it's transformative. Anxiety feeds on the chaos in our mind, and the way to put out that fire is by creating spaces of silence. You don't have to become a Tibetan monk, but a few minutes a day of deep breathing can bring you back to a state of calm. Practice it for at least 5 minutes a day, and you'll see how your perspective changes. Imagine you're pushing a giant rock uphill. What do you think will happen? You'll get tired, frustrated, and most likely give up. That's what happens when you fight against everything you can't control. Wise people teach us to focus only on what is in our hands, the present. If something is not up to you, simply let it go. Learn to say, "I can't do anything about this." And instead of getting exhausted, focus on what you can change. Another habit that will help you be more emotionally strong is to celebrate those small daily victories. You get up, make yourself a coffee, are kind to others, do a little exercise. These small actions have immense power. The trick is not to underestimate them. If you are consistent with them, you will build a solid foundation that will allow you to better handle difficult moments. Every step counts, and best of all, the present is always there to be lived. In the end, it all comes down to this: living in the present is the perfect antidote to anxiety. Life is not about waiting for the future to arrive or lamenting the past. It's about making the most of every moment as if it were your last and stopping waiting for things outside of your control to change on their own. Wise people knew this. And although their teachings may seem simple, their power is immense. Make every day count, because the present is all you have. As a wise person said, in life there is no place for anxiety, only for what you can do today. If you've made it this far, right, suffer, but then you will shine in the comments. I invite you to subscribe, activate notifications, and comment, so that YouTube recognizes that these videos are useful for people like you. This motivates us to continue creating similar content in the future. I suggest you check out the last 2 videos we recommend. I sincerely appreciate your time and support. See you on our next adventure.